A property manager by trade, Mayad Allos managed to establish himself as an artist in the field of drawing and sketching. How did he reach this level of confidence, you ask? Well, repetition. Unlock his golden nuggets, tips, and tricks in this episode and listen as we talk about the only way to become a better artist, why tracing an existing drawing is a step you should take, how to ace your drawing perspective, a secret to capturing shadows, and how to navigate through self doubt. If you want to be part of the conversation, then send in your questions and topics you want us to cover to hello@etchrlab.com. Hey, this is Jessie from Etchr. We believe in your power to create, so we invited artists from all around the globe to inspire you to keep on creating. Join us in this journey and let's celebrate creativity. This is Make More Art, the podcast. So much for agreeing to do this interview and welcome to Make More Art. I am excited to learn more about your story. Pretty interesting because I know you have a day job managing group of companies and properties, right? And but you also do art on the side. How you got to this point, we would love to know. But first, can you share a little bit more about your journey, how you get started? I'm sure it's going to be filled with a lot of stories, but I am all ears.
First of all, hi, good to meet you. And thank you for inviting me to this interview. I'm honored. So it all started at probably the age of 8 when I was absolutely obsessed with drawing cartoons. So I used to spend hours drawing Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse and Goofies, and I got myself into all sorts of cartoon caricatures. And then for a long time, I forgot all about it. It's just became like a distant memory, and you get on with life and you pick up golf and squash and water skiing, and you forget to how to use a pen. My day job is actually designing luxury houses. And I run a group of companies. They're all in property. So we have an interior design business, we have an architectural business, we have a construction business, all sorts of. So it's all about property. Mm-hmm. And I got into designing luxury houses about 20 years ago. In an area where I live in Surrey, the whole thing boomed, and everybody wanted mega houses. And they're quite nice to design, and they're really beautiful to build as well. So I got into it, and I started working with local architects. You know, you're never really happy unless you do the thing yourself. So I don't want to be uncomplimentary to anyone, mm-hmm. but I always felt I can do better.
Okay.
So, well, to my disappointment, I couldn't. I just thought I could, but that's so. I started playing around with some designs for houses, and to my surprise, people liked them. So I thought, oh my God, there is a market here to building and designing luxury houses. So I started all these big houses, and they did very well, and they sold well, and then I started getting frustrated. When you sit in front of a client, you want to basically show them something and get them excited, and you grab a pen and the result looks diabolical, and you think, okay, this is not good. I'm embarrassing myself. I should be able to draw better. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started sketching. So I started sketching just really to be able to sit in front of a client and say, do you want it like this or like this? And then the sketches were looking okay, but I thought they looked awful. And then I started working more and more on my sketches, and the sketches got a little bit better, and I thought it'd be nice to have them in color. And then I started working with markers, pro markers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But everything felt a little bit too plasticky for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted that really soft, romantic look when you design a house. And I thought, hey, it's easy. How difficult can watercolor be? Well, I didn't realize it really was a pain in the backside. I thought it was going to be a piece of cake. You buy a couple of brushes,
Yeah.
get a piece of paper, and what? Yeah. So you buy the paper, you buy the brushes, and you don't realize you bought the wrong paper, you bought the wrong brushes, you don't know what you're doing. Then suddenly you think, oh my God, I really know nothing about this.
Mm.
It's very humbling because for me, I've built my own business. I'm a relatively confident sort of person. And I thought, it can't be that hard. There's so many people doing it.
Mm.
And then when you try it and it looks like a dog's dinner, you think, well, maybe it is actually a bit harder than I thought.
Mm.
But I'm a stubborn mule and I don't give up. So I thought, okay, that's it. YouTube. That drove me insane.
Mm.
YouTube drove me insane because the problem with YouTube is it's great if you want to learn how to do something particular.
Yeah.
So if I want to know how to blend, how to get a green, you go on YouTube and it tells you it's yellow and blue and you get green.
Yes.
But it doesn't actually hold your hand through the journey. It gives you facts, it gives you demos of what you want to deliver. But when you don't actually even know what you're trying to do, then YouTube is really difficult because where do you start? What do I do? So I started looking at artists on YouTube who design houses.
Mm.
And of course, they show you what they are doing. And it never really worked. It really never worked. You try to imitate, and you try to imitate some. Have you tried imitating somebody else's art?
I did. That was where we did the same thing. I went on YouTube and I tried painting roses, and
Yeah.
mine was a disaster. It looked like a cabbage, but I thought it was, the way it was shown on YouTube, like step by step. I thought I was confident enough that I could replicate it, but I was so wrong. It
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 doesn't it
didn't
doesn't work. Yeah. I think it's impossible
Mm.
for an amateur artist to pick up a video on YouTube and replicate it. I think um, it's impossible for many reasons. A, because every artist has a different style. Every artist has a different stroke, the brush, the blending of there's so many things.
Yeah.
So I started getting really, I tell you, I've got a room full of pro markers and watercolors and the mistake I made is you think by just buying a pro marker, you're going to know how to use it on a piece of paper. And that, and then I discovered something which actually made all the difference. The only way to become an artist is through doing the same thing thousands and thousands of times. And I could not, maybe I'm thick or maybe I'm slow, but I could not find a replacement to repetition. And the most I have learned is through when you repeat the same thing again and again and again, you do it and you make a mistake and you think, oh, I did it differently and it actually looks better. And then suddenly you think, wait a second, oh, if I do this, it's good. And then you think, that's how this worked. So about 5 years ago, I started the sketching journey.
Mm-hmm.
I've just been looking back at them and they look awful. my sketches of 5 years ago. And I'm very comforted to see that some other artists have done the same over 5 years. When they go back, they look at how bad it was.
Mm.
Um, and I started adding. So I thought, okay, well, I can't get color. I don't understand color. I couldn't understand what actual color means. I couldn't even look at I actually thought I was colorblind because I didn't really understand color at all. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to kill myself over this. I'm going to start my journey with black and white and a splash of green. And I thought, okay, well, I can sketch with ink and pen now, barely. I'll use a bit of green. So I just chose 3 greens, and that's all I did. And because I just did the same thing again and again and again and again, actually it got better. And that gave me the courage to add a few other colors here and there until now I am relatively confident with colors. The other thing that's really important, I downloaded a piece of software called Sketchbook. Okay, it's like Procreate. And what I did is I spent months tracing over photographs.
Oh, okay.
Tracing. So when you trace over an existing drawing, you start to actually discover lines you didn't realize existed. You start to understand certain angles, certain ratios, certain proportions. And I started building a bit of an art and then I stopped tracing and I started drawing on Sketchbook. And because, of course, the computer is very forgiving, thank God. There's always an eraser. You rub things, you do it again, you rub things, you do it again. And when I started feeling very comfortable with Sketchbook, I got really bored. And that's when I started thinking, okay, I'm now confident enough to actually take out some of my watercolor paper, my brushes. But just to tell you one thing, my daughter bought me a sketchbook as a birthday present, a nice sketchbook as a birthday present, about 4 or 5 years ago. And I said, that is so precious for me, from my daughter, that I'm only going to use it when I don't make mistakes.
Okay.
How many pages have I drawn in that sketchbook so far? 0.
Really? You haven't used it?
I'm still not confident enough to ruin my daughter's present.
Oh, that precious, huh? That's so precious. Okay. But wow.
So yeah. So what I'm trying to tell you is, you still, no matter how good you get, you still think it's not good enough. So practice.
Wow.
And doodle.
Okay. I have picked up
a
lot from what you just shared, Mayad. I mean, from nothing can replace repetition, building up your confidence by practicing and drawing exact same thing over and over. You mentioned thousands of times, but also even with that gap, getting frustrated, starting out something. What I like about that story is that you saw a need. There was a pain point that you have identified, and from there, that's where it started. Like, you identified, okay, these sketches I can do better, and then you realize that, oh, okay, I need to study more, I need to learn more about this craft. And you didn't stop it. Like you said it yourself, you're the type of person that is a stubborn mule who never gives up. And you learned a lot from that journey, and you are continuously learning. Hearing you talked about that sketchbook that you haven't used, it's surprising, because when I look at your works, I mean, they look so good, so precise. And just hearing you talk about how you reach this point of that level of confidence to be able to sketch houses and landscapes, and yet very humble to say that you are still not confident to even use that sketchbook is
I'm very scared to use it. I don't want to make, I want a perfect book, and
yeah.
I don't feel I'm good enough yet.
Hmm, hmm.
Yeah.
Um, well, yeah, that's surprising, really. But I guess it's because it's so precious for you, and it's also good to hear coming from a seasoned artist like yourself that self-doubt is part of it, right? The critic in us will always look at our works and say that this can be better, there are still areas for improvement, or for the lack of a better term, say that you're not good enough. But in the eyes of people looking at your works, these are really good art pieces, and you're such a pro. So I want to touch on that real quick because a lot of the listeners, Mayad, are hobbyists and enthusiasts. And that feeling that you mentioned about you're still scared to make mistakes, it's a common feeling that everyone has. When I started, I was so scared to even show anyone my works because I'm sure they're gonna, for others they will think, oh, that's so good, it looks like a flower, a rose, a piece of
Mm.
rose. But from my perspective, oh my gosh, no, this looks like a cabbage. But how do you navigate through that, thinking and mindset that whenever that attacks you and make you feel that no, this isn't good enough, especially that when you work with clients for commission works, how do you position
Well,
yourself and to navigate through those?
yeah, there are two different sides to this, and they're very, very different mindsets.
Mhm.
First one is the art, and I think you have to see humor in your own failings. If you take yourself too seriously, or if you take the art too seriously, uh, that's a dead end for me. So the first thing is, you've got to basically look at yourself and you think, my God, you are awful. Yeah. And you have to actually say it with a smile. And yes, occasionally you get annoyed, but first of all, you have to uh, look at yourself with humor, because otherwise, look, art is for us to enjoy.
Mm.
So don't be too serious. So that's the first thing. And I'm very blessed. I live with my partner, and she has a very, very, very good eye. And I tell you, if I have shown her maybe 1,000 watercolor trees, and if I show her one more tree, she will probably smack me with a pan. In fact, not probably, she will for sure.
Uh-huh.
And it makes me laugh. I keep drawing another tree, and she keeps telling me, "This is good, this is bad. Get off my case." And she shouts at me for showing her trees, but enjoy it. So to me, and now I think I can just about draw a tree.
Mm.
Uh, so for me, just have some humor with your work. Don't take yourself too seriously. That answers the first question. How do you get over the
Mhm.
frustration? Yeah. When you do commission work, it's very different because you're actually charging people money
Yeah.
to do something for them. And therefore, that to me is a complete different mindset. And the worst part of it is when you get a fairly particular client who wants specific things. And the worst part is when you've drawn a drawing and it's watercolor, and they say, oh, one client said to me, is it possible, is it too late to add a tree here? And you think, what? I've just finished the drawings. You can't add a tree now, madam. Uh, so I tell you what I do, which is interesting. Well, to me, it's interesting.
Mm.
When I take commissions, I assess right at the beginning whether the client is going to be focused, they know what they want, bang,
Mhm.
or whether they're going to be a little bit more fluid in their thinking.
Okay.
So The ones that are not very decisive, what do? I draw it digitally for them.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because I know for sure they're going to ask me to add a tree somewhere or something. Yeah. So to me, when I feel, and when you're drawing, so on the confidence level, when you're drawing digitally, you always get, you can, if you're not happy, erase, do again, again, and again, again. So therefore, the ones that I do pen, ink, and watercolor, uh, let me just show you something. I'm doing a very, what's the right word? Moody, gothic-y, sort of a bit of a darker look for someone. He wants to put this gaming type of image on T-shirts.
Okay.
Yeah. You see this pile of paper here.
Mm-hmm.
You see this clock tower, and you see this clock tower, and you see this, and you see the clock towers. And I can now show you 40, 50 drawings that I have done in order to get to a point where I think I can now put it actually on canvas. So when you're drawing commissions that are outside your comfort zone, practice them so many times before you draw them. If something is within your comfort zone, then pick up the pen. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because I know a number of my followers on Instagram, they do commissions as well. But what I see people doing all the time is they go straight into their drawings, as opposed to practice, and then draw it. Yeah. So that's my advice, is if something you feel super comfortable with, draw it. Otherwise, back to the old repetition.
I think that's a really major golden nugget that I'm getting from you, Mayad. It's interesting. You said that, your take is very interesting, and I find it very interesting because for other artists, right, they would recommend that you explore different subjects all at once and try and figure out which ones resonate with you. And then repeat that process over and over. But with you, it's focus on the one subject, repeatedly practice it over and over. And I think it makes sense because you build that, you build on it. You mentioned earlier when you were talking about, okay, you thought that you have all of these copies of works that you've done repeatedly, and then you saw that, okay, I made a mistake here, but hey, this looks a lot better with that stroke or with that line. So for someone who is starting out, that would be your recommendation, to focus on just one subject, would you say, and draw it over and over? You mentioned trees earlier.
Yeah. I mean, look, everybody's character is different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's quite important. My brain works in a way that if I want to be good at something, I want to be really good at that thing. My mom has taken up art recently.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
At the age of 80. And she gets bored. She says, one day she draws a tree, one day she draws a bird, one day she draws a house. And she gets bored and she keeps changing. And I think for her, that seems to work.
Okay.
But she also says, I'm never going to be good. So if you want to have fun and draw different things and enjoy different things, that's fine. I am obsessing over being really, really, really good. And if you want to be really, really, really good, I think you do what you said. Learn something and then build on it. Rather than, look, what is the what is the shortest distance between 2 points? A straight line.
Line, yes.
Why zigzag? Just go straight there. If you want to go there, just go there. Don't go everywhere else. And
Uh-huh.
by the way, so what do you like drawing? You like drawing flowers?
Yes, I do a lot of loose florals. We use
Okay.
watercolor.
So you're probably very good at it. I'm sure you are. Uh, how different is that to drawing houses? It's quite different, right?
It's very different. Very different.
Yeah. Do you think you can be as good with your flowers if one day you're drawing flowers, the next day houses, the next day people, then animals?
No, for me to be able to say that I am comfortable drawing florals, I did exactly what you did. A lot of florals. I mean, I could go back and look at my sketchbooks and all of those, torn pages of sketch, and they're all loose florals, different versions of loose
Yeah,
florals over and over. And they're
yeah.
not tried. I mean, I could have tried trees, but no, I did focus on florals and florals alone.
And that you've done exactly what I did to get better. But
Mm.
if you want to have fun, then play around.
Yeah, I have absolutely agree. I mean, you said art is we're supposed to enjoy art. So yeah, you're absolutely right when you said it. People have different I guess learning ways of learning. And then for others it's good to practice and practice, focus on one thing. I kind of related with habits though, with what you said. When when something is you're doing something continuously, I forgot if it's 14 days or 21 days straight, then it becomes a habit. So
Is that right?
I think I'm not sure, and people can correct
Yeah.
me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think a number of days, if you continuously do something repeatedly, consistently for X number of days, then it becomes a habit. And it
Mm.
becomes, part of your lifestyle, that you're not putting a lot of effort to do it because it's part of your lifestyle. So I think with what you did and what I did and trying to get more confidence in drawing the things that we draw or things that we paint is to repeatedly do it over and over. That worked for me.
And then maybe
Mhm.
maybe every so often play around with different options on the same thing.
Yes. Yes.
And then that's how you slowly expand your vocabulary.
I love it. I think you mentioned that with colors.
Yeah. Well, that's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you
I
started from
started
deep.
with green because that's the only. I mean, I needed green. I had to use green because you have to have a tree when you draw a house. So
Yes.
I needed green.
Hmm.
And then I've learned green, then you add a little bit of yellow, and then you add a little bit of this, and before you know it, oh my
Okay.
God, I've got a whole palette.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I like that. I like that way of learning about colors. It's also a way to learn about colors because when you talk about green, right? For a lot of people who are not very well versed with, palettes and the colors. Of course, when you say green, it's just one shade of green. But when you are practicing and trying to understand, learn a skill, especially with art, you realize there are a lot of shades of green, different shades of green, and you start to understand, okay, it works well with this when you mix this with this. And then like what you said, you slowly branch out and add in more and more. I remember in one of your posts about shadows, and you said that, for some people, when we think of shadows, it's usually gray. And then you mentioned that when you look closer at what you created, it's actually a darker shade of blue, what you used. Do you remember that
Well,
post?
I'm very impressed. You even read this.
Yeah, I kind of stalked you on Instagram. I was just looking at
Oh,
I was actually looking at some of your posts, and I find it very interesting because there are a lot of really good points there that if I'm starting out, I mean, I could literally learn by just reading. And you're very generous with sharing your, techniques and some of the technicalities about light and shadows, perspective, blending, layering. And I that caught my attention because in my perspective, when I say shadows, normally it's, yeah, it's gray.
Mm,
That was quite interesting when you said, okay, so I had to zoom in. I had to
yeah.
zoom the post from Instagram, and this is absolutely a darker shade of blue.
Well, I used to think shadows were gray.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, everybody thinks shadows are gray, and they never are.
Mm.
Well, I mean, of course, sometimes they are. Of course, there are gray shadows, but the majority of the time, they're not really gray. And
Mhm.
that was a revelation. Oh, that's another thing.
Mm.
That's another thing that really frustrated me for years. Shadows.
Shadows. Uh-huh.
God, have you tried looking at shadows on YouTube?
Oh my God. It's so hard. That shadows, light, and
It's
reflection. Those are the
impossible.
things that how do they do? Oh,
And oh, by the way, the other thing that I saw is apparently there is a whole degree, i.e., course, whether it's university degree or not, but there's a science of studying shadows. And I thought, I'm just drawing houses. I just want to know. I mean, I tell you what used to drive me crazy is you have a window and
uh-huh.
you think, okay, well, I know the sun is coming from the right.
Hmm.
Therefore, I know the shadow is going to be there, but where does it start? Where does it end? Honestly,
Yeah.
it's so hard to find. So you go around London looking at windows and you look at the shadows, and you know the problem?
What is it?
You never have sunlight in London.
Oh yeah,
So it's
that's
always grey.
always gray.
So, so,
Yeah,
so you
absolutely
can't
right.
even look at windows. I mean, I look out of the
It's
window, there are no shadows.
who knows?
Yeah. So
Better.
that was very frustrating.
Yeah.
Uh, anyway, so I had to work it out for myself in terms of the geometry of where the shadows are. But sorry to digress. Yes, and through lots and lots of scrambling around for information, I learned that shadows are not always gray,
Mhm.
uh, which actually was quite good fun because you think, hey, I can do this, could be more interesting. I can use darker colors, stronger colors. Uh, and I think people should experiment with shadows in terms of color. Shadows in terms of composition,
Mm.
um, I don't know how people find that information. I bet you, I dare you, the next week, uh, find a few good tutorials on how to create good shadows on windows, on doors. Uh, I couldn't find them. Where does it start? I mean, without going technical, because you know the window sets inside a reveal, right?
Yes.
And the depth of that window and the depth of the reveal tells you the depth of the shadow. The
Yeah.
deeper the window, the deeper the shadow, right?
Right.
Okay. So where's the problem? The problem is what you don't work out is, of course, the reason why we can't find that information is because the time of year
Mm.
and the country you're in
Is
and
a
the time of day
it's a fact.
affects
Yes.
the shadows.
Yes.
So I came to this magical conclusion. I don't give a hoot. I'm going to draw all my shadows how I think they
How
look
they look.
nice. And that's it.
Yes. I think that's the way to go when you talk about shadows. Because you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. It's I shadows, light, reflections, those are really, I don't know, it's so complex, so complicated, so difficult for a lot of people to, I mean, how do you even, right, show shadows, the reflections, and how the light is peeking through whatever, like leaves and lines and, you know. So
So
I
my,
think I'm
my
gonna follow your
yeah, just do what you think looks good. And then strangely enough, after a while, you
mm,
start to have your own style of shadows. And before you know it, people are saying, hey, this looks good. And you think, oh, well, it was only an experiment, but
uh-huh,
it works.
right.
So so that's where we are with shadows. Is it's basically make it up. Unless you're blessed and you lived in a sunny country, then you can literally just look out of the window.
Oh, okay, there is my shadow. The light is coming
Yeah,
from the outside. Okay,
yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Sorry, I find the London weather. That is a good punchline on shadows. And why you cannot see shadows on windows when you walk around London is because it's always gray.
Uh, Especially in the winter, yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly, sadly.
What about the blending, the layering aspect of things in your works, Mayad? What would be your recommendation? Because it's a little bit tricky when I personally look at your works, right? So there are like different layers, but it's so
Mm.
precise at the same time. But what I also notice is how you position your subjects. So perspective is also another thing that you're very good at. So any pointers for our listeners or our audience for those aspects?
Yeah. Um, Perspective. Single point, 2 point perspectives. Keep it really simple,
Mm,
please. That's the main thing for somebody that wants to improve their art. Keep your perspectives really, really simple. So, just to give you an idea, uh, and without going too technical,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
single point perspective is easy. All the lines come into one point, right? That's it.
Mhm.
And always put your vanishing point in the middle of your page, yeah, and draw your angles off it so that keep it simple. As soon as you complicate it, then you'll end up into you won't end up in a mess because I'm sure most people are good enough to work it out. But keep it simple and then slowly, slowly veer off simple.
Mhm.
With 2 point perspective, my tip is I'm just going to show you this drawing again, only because it's next to my hand. Yeah. So with 2 point perspective, if you take the object from a distance, yeah, then your lines, your perspective lines, become more and more parallel.
Mm,
Okay.
okay.
So what I'm saying is, if I'm looking at the building in front of me in 2 point perspective, the lines are very steep, right?
Yes.
Okay. You step away 2 miles away from that building,
No,
all the lines become parallel. So when you're working with 2 point perspective, go from a distance, make your lines parallel. Don't go into this converging into the vanishing points.
mhm.
Draw all your angles at the same practice. Keep practicing the same angle.
Mm.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And make the right and the left symmetrical.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it gives you that 2 point perspective feel, but it's keeping it simple. It's a mirror image, right and left.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. It's like a mirror image. Huh.
Yeah. And keep the angles and try to use something like 30-35 degree angles.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make them 45, that's too steep. Make it a little bit shallower. And literally, and I posted a lantern, which is really interesting. Sorry, I find it interesting. By the
Mhm.
way, tell me to shut up when I talk too much, yeah?
Oh no, this is really good. I'm trying to look at
Okay,
Instagram and you mentioned lantern.
okay,
Actually
right. Let
here.
me let me show you something interesting. I posted a lantern on my Instagram, which is, if you look at my page, it is the fifth line down on the left-hand side.
Yeah. So this one.
That's it. Have a look, please, at the center line. Okay? Have a look at the line, not the right-hand side, not the left-hand side, but look at the middle line, please. Are you
Okay.
seeing it?
Yep. So
Okay.
I'm showing the okay.
Okay. What do you see the middle line doing?
It's like it's dripping.
It doesn't look it, but it's perfectly straight in the middle.
Yes.
But it looks like there is a real perspective to these lines.
Mm-hmm.
But the center line is dead straight, and then the right and the left are in exactly the same angle.
Angle. Yeah. Oh.
But it's quite deceptive because it looks like as if it's coming at you.
Yeah, that's yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's what I would say practice with on 2-point perspective. Keep the middle line straight.
Great.
Right and left angles at say 30 odd degrees, and it'll give you a really nice effect.
I also
Layering.
Layering. I also like what you did with the light.
What did I do with the line? Oh yes.
That's passing through the lantern.
Yeah. By just doing shades of gray.
Gray, exactly.
Thank you.
Love the illusion.
Layering.
Mm-hmm.
Layering comes from two places for two reasons. The first and the real honest reason behind layering is lack of confidence.
Mm.
So the reason why I first started layering is because I wasn't confident enough to use the right color from the beginning.
Okay.
So I would do a soft layer, and then I think, can I afford to go a bit deeper? Yeah, go on. Put another layer, and then I'd build up several layers until I'm happy. Yeah. So that's how I started, by building these layers on top of each other, because I basically was scared to make a mistake. And then I discovered that I really enjoy something. Can I show you something?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So this is my board, and I put my pad on when I draw. But I just want to show you something. Do you see? Can you see this?
Yes.
The architectural detail.
It looks so real. Oh my God.
Thank you. Then I discovered that I love layering cold and warm colors on top of each other.
That's interesting. Cold and warm on top of each other.
Yeah. I really enjoy now, and that's the drawing I've just showed you. I love doing architectural details and starting out with raw sienna mixed with a bit of burnt sienna. Then I add some blues on top. Once that dries, I add some blues, and then I go back and add another layer of burnt sienna. And that's not because I'm scared. That's because now I enjoy it, because I learned. Now I know what I like. But it all started with I was just too scared to put the right colors in. So layering again, start by going simple, start with building up the level slowly. And as you're confident, use it to your own advantage. So that's my tip of wisdom for the day.
Love it. And Mayad, with that, I know our audience and our listeners learned a lot from what you shared. So many golden nuggets. I was actually about to ask you if there's anything that you would like to highlight or share with our audience. But at this point, I know that you will be, aside from this, listening to you talk about your journey, your tips and tricks that you just shared with us, especially the repetition. I really love it. And those techniques that you shared about perspective, layering, and light, how to do light, how to do shadows specifically, and how to leverage on the use of colors. So you will have a class with us. It's happening on the 18th at 10 a.m. UK time. So can you share a little bit more about what they will learn during the class. So this is an in-person class, by the way. So for
Yes.
those who are listening or based in the US, I'm sorry, that's gonna be an in-person class, but I'm pretty sure that when you drop by Mayad's Instagram, we're gonna drop in his handle in the description box. You will learn a lot from his website. He has a website as well. So that's also linked on Instagram, and we will also include that in the description box. But Mayad, for the in-person class, what can they expect from it?
So the in-person class is, again, talk about repetition. Look,
Trees, trees, and more trees.
not just trees, but I've done the same drawing now,
Mm,
I don't know, 20 times. And I actually, the first time I was happy with it, but I kept doing it again and again.
uh-huh.
What I want to share next Friday, the first thing is the actual proportions, because it's actually quite hard looking at a building and putting it down on paper,
Yeah.
and it doesn't look wonky, it doesn't look too tall, it doesn't look too wide.
Mm.
It's really difficult. So how do we look at a building and then make sure that it's the same proportions on paper? How do you use your pen or pencil to reflect the actual building onto your paper? So that's the first thing I want to teach. The second thing I would like to teach is how to take a pencil drawing into a nice ink and pen drawing.
Okay.
What I'm going to do there, by the way, I'm also, I have learned something from YouTube the other day. You'll be pleased to hear. I've learned how to provide a good tracing solution without using iPads. So I've learned that I can take my ink drawing, I can scan it, I can reprint it on a specific type of GSM paper, and it comes up just enough that it can be traced over with ink.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I'm going to have one of these for every person in the class. So the ones that want to play around with proportions using a pen is great. And the ones that they don't feel confident enough that their pencil sketch is good enough, I'm going to give them one to literally just trace over with ink and go straight into watercolor. Yeah. So I'm just trying to cut some of the phobias out.
Right. Yeah.
So proportions, number one. Number two, ink and pen. Okay. Number three, I want to teach them about the paper. I don't know, what paper do you use?
I use 300 GSM cold press.
200.
300.
300 GSM. Cotton or cellulose?
Cotton.
You use cotton. Yeah. So I'm going to work with Etchr paper, of course. Yeah. And I want to show people the difference between using cotton versus cellulose, between what happens on cotton paper, what happens on cellulose paper. And then I would like to show them how to draw a tree.
Yes.
And actually, a very interesting point. A tree close up is very, very, very different to a tree in a distance.
Yeah.
Okay. Tree in a distance can be a little bit loose, a little bit vague, and you can be quite easygoing with a distant tree. You bring that tree close up, like this drawing where it's at the foreground, it's a completely different story. Yeah. And hence why I've tried all sorts of techniques of different trees at the front to decide which tree do I use.
Okay.
And I've settled down on a particular tree that I'm going to use, and I want to share that with them. The other thing I want to share is how long it takes.
That's actually my question earlier. How much time do you spend? Because you do a lot of drawings, especially with repetition. That takes a
I know,
huge amount of
I
time.
know. So this piece that's on, I was hoping to try and draw it in 2 hours,
Uh-huh.
and I have failed abysmally. I could not get that drawing done, and I've done it about 10 times, and I can't get it down to 2 hours.
Okay.
Good thing I'm a very patient person. So I concluded, rather than going fast, is to not care, go slow. I've asked you guys if I can extend it from 4 hours to 5 hours, because if it takes me 3 hours to draw, it's going to take 3.5, 4 hours, including. So the other thing that I want to actually show people is how long it takes to do a good job. In that drawing that we're going to do, the tree alone is over an hour. Just the tree. So that's the other thing that I want people to realize, is that when they draw, to give the right amount of time for each element in order to produce the result they want. So if you want a very loose drawing, you can do the whole thing in an hour.
Yeah.
If you draw this on A5, a small drawing, in an hour.
Yes.
You draw it in A4, that's 3 hours. You draw it in A3, that's 5 hours. Yeah?
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to show them is depth and shadows. How do you get your shadows on your windows? Yeah. And how do you spread the light on things like clay roofs? Because you want your clay roofs to have that shimmering light, because they not twinkle, what's the right word? They sparkle in some places. Well, unless they're really dirty and old, yeah.
Yes.
And of course, a little bit of one-point perspective as well. So a lot to learn.
That's jam-packed. And
I see I've just exhausted you just by talking about it.
No, you got me excited, and I wish I could be there in London to attend your class, because it's really interesting. It's very detailed in the sense, and I like the fact that you structure it in a way that it's step by step. You build, rather than, okay, these are all the steps, this is how you paint a tree and all. You start from the basic, the foundation, and then you guide them through how to really create from the tree to the shadows and the colors. So it's going to be a really interesting class, and I'm glad that you're doing this in person. The reason I mentioned that as well, but earlier, that I was about to ask how much time do you spend on each painting, is because when you watch it, and this is the difference when you watch something from YouTube and you try to learn something from YouTube, is that sometimes it's time lapsed, and there are a lot of things that were cut out from that process, and boom, you already have a pretty nice painting. But what happens, in between, and what, the effort that you have to put in order to arrive into that output, it takes hours, like what you said.
Well, that's actually the most deceptive part of YouTube.
Yes.
Is you look at YouTube and you think, okay, I can do this, it's going to take me an hour. And you don't realize it's going to take 10 hours of practice and 3 hours of drawing to get to the same result. And that's if you're even starting in the right place. Yeah. There's, by the way, one guy that does a particular tree on YouTube. Yeah. That I really like. I think it's a beautiful, and I'm not going to mention him because I can't spell his name. He's Japanese. And I've tried to copy what he does on YouTube. Yeah. And it is so difficult, but he makes it look so easy. And I think I'm good at trees now, and I still can't do it. So develop your own style.
I love your trees, by the way.
Huh? Do you? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I love your trees.
Thank you. Thank you very much. One thing I would like to ask, please, if anybody's listening, the thing that I would really love to be is a better teacher.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I would love to be a better teacher because I was very frustrated when I was learning. And I want to learn how to teach the most effective way and the most enjoyable way. So, anybody that watches or listens to this podcast, what I would love to hear is what you think of my courses and how you think they can be improved.
That's that.
That I would really like to learn.
That's very, that's very kind of you. I mean, when you talked about how you were frustrated when you're starting out, I think it's reflected on the way that you structure your class. Hearing you talk about how you structured it, because you position yourself as someone who is a beginner. You structure the class with all of these questions that you had when you were starting out. And I think that's a good starting point for someone who would like to teach versus this is what I would like you to know. This is what I would like you position. You reverse engineered it by, okay, what is it that they would like to know? What are their pain points? What are the usual questions? And that's why what I said that I love the fact that you will be doing this face to face, because I mean, remote is, of course, a lot of people are doing here at Etchr, we're doing remote classes most of the time. But it's also a different experience altogether when you are working, side by side with a teacher, and the teacher can easily check how you position your brush, your pen, how you mix your colors, how the amount of water. These are some of the things that you cannot do virtually. The
Impossible.
experience is totally different. So this is going to be a really interesting class, and with how you detail the things that they will be learning, I'm sure everyone is pretty excited for the
Yeah, and I think the challenge is the different standards in the room.
Yes.
Because I'm guessing some people will need a little bit more attention than others, and I like to give a lot of attention to everybody. So that's going to be an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what standards. I know it's intermediate, but I don't know what standards each. I mean, what is intermediate? I have no idea.
Exactly. People have different definition of what it. Yeah, I'm an intermediate, watercolor artist, or I'm a beginner. People have different definitions, and when you get into it, because I've also taught, kids and adults, and people have different levels of understanding as to what age they are in. People would want more attention every step, like every stroke. They would want someone, is this correct or not? So yeah, this class is going to be very interesting, but I'm pretty sure that you can handle it. And given that you are coming from a place that you would want to improve the way that you teach, I'm sure it's going to be an amazing class.
I'm hoping that if nothing else, if we can just make it lighthearted and fun, and people will enjoy the day, then we've achieved something. Because it is after all about having a nice time.
Exactly. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you are listening to this podcast or you're watching it from YouTube, I'm sure you enjoyed this episode. We will definitely include the details of the class into the description and to the blog as well. But if you want to learn more about Mayad, you can visit his Instagram account.
Art, MAYAD ALLOSART.
Okay. Yeah. And when you visit his Instagram, it's like, wow. It's full of treasure, you guys. Read through the captions as well. I recommend, because you will pick up a lot. Maya, I was supposed to ask you if you have any other golden nugget, but you have given us a lot. So what I can only say is thank you for being so generous with your talent, with your experience, with your wisdom, and a lot of golden nuggets with our audience and our listeners. Your class is happening this November 18th at 10 a.m. UK time. If you guys sign up for it, if you haven't done so, please do sign up. It's going to be an amazing class. You heard it here on the podcast. You'll be learning a lot. It's going to be a jump-packed class, and it's in person. So level of experience. Maya, anything else that you want to share with our audience before we wrap up?
No, I'm just really, really excited, and thank you for doing this. You'll be pleased to hear this is my, at the age of 61, I think, this is my very first podcast. So I'm honored.
Oh wow, it's a privilege to interview you as well. When I was just looking
Thank you.
at your works, I was like, yeah, he needs to be on the podcast. I knew that it's going to be a really information filled, knowledge filled, wisdom filled episode, and you didn't disappoint our audience. I really learned a lot from this interview. So thank you for agreeing to do this with me.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
All the best with your workshop. I'm sure it's going to be a whole lot of fun, and all the best with your works. We're going to look forward to more of your posts and captions on the ground. And take care of yourself, Maya. Thank you so much for being on Make More Art.
Have you ever tried doing something over and over again until it becomes a part of your lifestyle? Well, that is a neat trick, or should I say a smart hack, for anyone who would like to take on art or even a new skill. I will certainly give this a try. And if you intend to do so, share with us your plans through the comments associated with this podcast at etchrlab.com/mayad.